here with Rachel, and we're your hosts for the Merry Writer podcast. This week we're on episode 327, asking who is Danielle Harrington? Before we start, don't forget to visit and follow our coffee page where you can access lots of goodies for free. If you're in a position to support us, you can become a Merry Writer for $2 a month and get access to exclusive content. Everything earned on coffee goes into keeping the show going, and we appreciate any support. Okay, this week we're getting to know Danielle Harrington. Danielle is a fantasy author who writes the Wells of Power series. Book one, Keyholder, is available now. Danielle, thank you for joining us on the podcast. We really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Everyone says that, and it's like, we'll see if you think that when you're finished at the end of it.
I enjoy a conversation type podcast. It's chill.
See, everyone says that, and then we've got all these extra questions we're like throwing at you that you weren't ready for, and it's like you have to be on the ball.
Try me. I'm ready.
Okay, so let's learn all about you. So, first question: what drew you to write in the genre fantasy of all the genres?
So, I have been writing since I was very little. I think I remember I wrote my first short story when I was maybe 6 or 7 on my parents' computer. It was like 24-point font. I did not know any grammar. I didn't hardly know how to spell things, but I liked to listen to story. My mom read to me, all growing up. I liked to tell stories. So when I was little, a big influence is I read the Harry Potter books. Chronicles of Narnia was a really big one for me too. I loved Chronicles of Narnia. Then when I got a little bit older, Lord of the Rings has been a huge one, and then more recently, Shadow and Bone. Just I loved the magic and like the fantastical elements that come with fantasy, and I really loved um, how creative fantasy is, but when you really boil fantasy down, it's still like good versus evil and some kind of story that encompasses that. So I think just the combination of like the idea that you could do so many different things, like really you build the fantasy world, you can do what you want with it, you can make it what you want it to be, and you can give people just that experience of a new world. And so I think one of the biggest things, like now on the writing side and like outlining and thinking and brainstorming, world building is huge. Like you want to create this totally new atmosphere that people can step into and feel like they're there. What does it look like? What does it smell like? What are the characters dressed like? Just I think those elements of fantasy, of that magical, the magic and stepping into a whole new world, is just always so appealed to me my whole life. So I've enjoyed reading those, but now on the creation side, it's a lot of work to create a new world. There's a lot that goes into it.
I always found with fantasy, like as you said, the world building for like traditional fantasy, where it's set in, and you have to think of everything, all the little things you have to really build, and all the good versus evil. And yet, even if you've got like dragons and griffins and sea monsters and wizards or anything, it's still relatable. Fantasy is still relatable to the reader in modern world and everything. And I've always loved that. Even if you have got, people with special powers and, shadowy governments that are floating in the sky and everything. It's like there's still an element of relatability to it.
100%, yeah. And that's another thing that I just love about creating books in general, because ultimately whatever kind of story or world that you build, we're all tying back to those core essential elements of like things we can all relate to, like love and trial and hunger and sex and like all these topics that you can explore in very vastly different ways. But when you distill a story down to its like key elements, like we're all people, we're all human, we can relate to different parts of the story, we all have different lived experiences, but those still distill down to like what it means to be human. And I think that's really beautiful.
That is well said. I really like that because yeah, I mean I agree with everything that you say and what Ari said too about fantasy still being relatable. When you do world building and stuff, you just have 110% creative control because when you write fiction, obviously you can make things up as you go along, but world building it just broadens those horizons, but you can still explore those themes and make it relatable for your readers. And I just think there's so many different things that you can try with it, and it's just such a It's so cool to just basically have the world in the palm of your hands.
Yes. So in Keyholder, it was a new exercise for me because my first series that I had written, it's a 4-book young adult dystopian series. I kind of consider I got my degree in independent publishing, doing that series and learning so much and like becoming a better writer, working with editors and cover artists and learning formatting, all these things. So that when I got to Keyholder, I was like, okay, well, I want to try fantasy and like world building in fantasy is really important because to have a more rich and deep fantasy, like you have to build the world. And like you said, you have to build everything. There is nothing that exists yet. And all of the pieces have to be there to feel like it's a robust, well thought out world. And that's like separate from the story. Like, what's just the world that the story takes place in? And in my dystopian series, it's the characters have superpowers. So I focused a lot on like building the power system. Like, what are people's abilities? That was a huge part of that series. And I knew going into fantasy, I was like, well, I want magic, but I wanted it to feel different than my first series. So my husband's fantastic at world building. Man, he's the best brainstorm partner ever. When we initially sat down and just started talking about like what Keyholder would even look like, before I had the story, I was like, well, I don't want people to have power because I already did that. I was like, what if places had power? Like you had to, like the magic was tied to a physical location. It's like that feels really different. Like, what would that look like? And so, thus, like the idea of the wells of power was created in that brainstorming conversation because there are 7 different wells that have 7 different kinds of magic. And then from that, we were like, well, how different is each kingdom? Like, what do the people look like? How does it shape the culture of the people who live, by the well of bountiful harvest or the well of euphoria? Or, we picked out all the different kinds of magic and then had to sit down and be like, hey, let's build the world of each kingdom because it's got to look all different. It's got to feel real. It was really fun, but man, it was challenging.
I love that though. That is so unique. The idea of a power against a place, not a people, and like as you said, starting with like how it affects. Because I said like when you have a group of people and you've got the land and how the land is like, depending on what sort of environment it is, will depend on what they wear, what their culture is, the foods they eat, because what's there, and then throwing in, let's throw in a lot of magic to really make it even more complicated. I love it. I love it.
Yes, and I have a very specific example of how my husband is brilliant because one of my wells, it's the well of beauty. I was like, oh, it's magic. It makes people beautiful. I got to that part of the book and I was like, well, I mean, the magic makes people beautiful. I guess it's just a beautiful kingdom. I didn't really have many ideas other than it looks pretty. And then my husband was like, no, 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 no. Listen, here's what I think we should do. He was like, what if people wore masks, and everyone's mask had to be unique and different? Because what if over time, as you drink the waters of beauty, everyone's face kind of converges into this idealized standard of beauty? Everyone looks the same. And I was like, oh, what? That's fantastic. So he was just, I would come up with like these base concepts. Some of them is like totally me with brainstorming. I had some moments in the outline of this book, but he just like has such a mind for building a world that like him and me working together, going through the kingdoms and the 7 kinds of magic and just really bringing out in each kingdom like nuances that make it feel unique, that make it feel real. I'm very proud of the world building of Keyholder. At the end of the day, it's fantastic.
Oh my gosh, you guys really have the power to think outside of the box. That is amazing. And that sounds so cool. I have to ask though, obviously, you guys really put your heart and soul into the brainstorming and the outlining of this book. How long did you work on the actual outline and the world building before you actually started writing?
So, Keyholder was a very unique book for me because the actual writing was the fastest it's ever happened for me. The brainstorming stage took maybe a couple of months of like thinking through it because I do a lot of thinking work every day because I'm a stay-at-home mom now. I've got my daughter, and then I have another daughter on the way. And so in my downtime, or even when I'm like working or, watching my daughter, I'm always like thinking through things. So maybe the brainstorming stage was a couple of months, and then several different like conversations with my husband over those months, kind of nailing down core concepts and world building and stuff. But this, once I got the world and I was like, okay, what story belongs in this world now? The plot of Keyholder came like no other book has ever come to me. And I wrote the whole manuscript in 63 days, which has never ever happened to me. And part of the reason I was able to do that is this book I actually wrote in its entirety using writing sprints. I went live on Instagram with my writer friends every single night for 63 straight days and sat down and wrote the book. So it forced me to work through points in the story where I felt a little stuck. So I was like, well, I'm writing tonight, come hell or high water, it's gonna happen. Let's figure out what we're doing. And a lot of the times I knew what I was gonna write that night, but sometimes I was stuck during the day and I was like, I have to sit down and ask myself some serious questions here because I need to write tonight. And so all books do not come that fast. A lot of books come very slowly. Book 2 of the Well of Power series is killing me. It's coming very slowly, but book 1 was just magical experience because I had built the world, and that really helped. I had all like the kingdom and the culture and like the map and what order they would go through the kingdoms. And another thing that really helped was past maybe chapter 4 or 5, I sat down and I asked myself, I was like, well, like, what's the true role of the keyholder? What's the reveals at the end? What's the lore here? What's the history? And I asked all the big questions and figured out the end and the reveals all at the beginning. So I had a direction I was writing towards, which also really helped in that like speed draft that I did.
You're putting my writing routine to shame. My
I think every book
goodness.
is different though. I think every book
No.
comes differently. Like I said, it was a very unique experience. Maybe I'll have it again with a book in the future, but it felt like, because my 4-book Hollis Time War series, that was 7 years of my life to write and publish. That was a lot of start and stop and start and stop. Keyholder was just like gas from the beginning.
But honestly, though, like knowing how agonizing it can be to write a book, I am so happy that that happened to you.
It was a very magical
Seriously.
experience. I was like,
Yeah.
this is great. Why did every book come this way? This is great.
Really, I know.
I just like the fact that it's like you kind of built this world and then was like, right, what is the story plot to sort of feed into this world? So it's almost like the world was the part that was pushing into your mind, going like, we need to be out here spreading around.
And also another thing too is I went through, there's 7 kingdoms. I went through 6 of them in book 1. We talked about one of the ones that we didn't go to. But in book 2, I'm going back through each kingdom, and something I'm being very intentional about is, okay, when we went through this kingdom in book 1, what was the world building, the things we learned? When we go back through it, how can I expand on that? How can we learn more on top of what we've already learned? So like, there wasn't time to explore all the nuances of every kingdom that we went through on our epic quest journey in Keyholder. But as I go back through on my next epic quest through the map, I'm like, oh, there's more opportunities to like make this even broader, even better. So that's been a fun challenge too.
I like that though. The idea of like expanding throughout the different books rather than doing everything in the first book. Because there's always, especially if you've got a character that's going through a world or a land that they've never been to or something, they'll only ever see certain surface levels until they go back. And then you sort of notice the little, oh, I didn't know they did that on these days. I didn't know this was a special festival because I wasn't here the last time that it happened and things like that. So yeah, and the same with the histories, like knowing the history. I exactly get that because the history of my fantasy impacts where the fantasy story is taking place because there's a lot of stuff that holds on from back there. And you have to be aware of what happened centuries ago and the cataclysmic events that sort of ripple down and then people don't remember it, but you're like, I need to have that. And you know for a fact almost most of that information isn't even going to get into the books. You just need to know it to sort of spread through the rest of the series. But
Yes,
wow.
100%.
You know, this has nothing to do with the world building or anything, but I just have to say it. I really appreciate your excitement and your passion when you talk about this story. Like it's very rare I talk to a writer that is this passionate about their story because most writers get shy talking about their books, and you can really tell that you love this story so much, and I think it's great.
I do. I'm very proud of it on a number of levels because I learned so much publishing like my first series. But I'm proud of like how much my writing has grown, and I'm proud of the world building work that got put in, and I also just think the story itself is really good. And I've had several readers reach out to me and just comment on different things about the story that really impacted them, or like their faith journey or their life, because one of the big themes that I touch on in Keyholder is this idea of tested faith. In the face of uncertainty, when you're undergoing suffering and hardship and sacrifice, what kind of person are you going to become in the face of all of that? And so it's just been really cool. I'm just very proud of this book. It's one of my, it's my baby.
Yeah, yeah, and it shows, and you should be proud. And I think it's so awesome that you're like you've had that type of feedback and stuff. That's awesome. But I to pivot back to your book a little bit, and we did touch upon this a little bit earlier, but what themes do you enjoy exploring in your books?
So I think I would say most of fantasy, we've got that good versus evil element. I definitely have that in Keyholder. Part of the world building of Keyholder is there's the gods, and everyone believes in the gods, and the gods gave humanity the wells of power. And the corrupt and selfish nature, human nature, really comes out in its ugliness in this, because when there's certain kinds of magic available, people fight over that. People want to hoard and control that and get power off of that. We've got, our 1,000 years ago lore dump history kind of thing going on, but in the current story, my main character Octavia, when she becomes this keyholder figure, this a figure of legend that can, unlock the well of eternal healing. There's a well of healing that's just not has no one can have access to it. It's been cut off by this killing darkness by the gods 1,000 years ago because of humanity's like greed and evilness. When she becomes this figure, she has to go through this journey of everyone trying to get the power that she has. So she's up against like evil people all book, and her faith in the gods that she's always had since she was little is tested, because she's like, well, I always believed that the gods exist, and that they're meant, they have good meant for my life, and I'm facing all of this evil, and I'm suffering and going through all this hardship, and I have to make these choices that I never thought I had to make. And we just see like how she changes from the beginning of the book to the end of the book, making these choices as a person with this power that everyone wants and everyone's fighting over. And so just this idea of who will you become, like I had mentioned a few minutes ago, what kind of person are you going to be when you're faced with having to make decisions that you never thought you'd have to make, having a faith that you've always believed one way, but now everything's changing and you have to question some of that, and you have to reassess, like, what do you actually believe? What kind of person are you after you reassess, faith ideals that you've had your whole life? And so that was something that was very personal for me too, because I think I was going through maybe a little crisis of faith in my real life while I wrote this book, and kind of just going through Octavia's mindset and anger or frustration and sadness, like through that just felt really real. So I put like a lot of myself into that element of the book with her story progression. Um, and I think that connected with a lot of readers too. And that was really encouraging for me. I was like, oh, yay, I said something that mattered to someone. That's all I want to do as a storyteller.
Yeah, I mean, it is that like that's such a relatable theme because we've all been there at one point in our life at least, trying to figure out who you are and staying true to yourself and all of that and certainly know that we've all been living through evil times and things and it's such an important theme and I think that when we discuss those themes in books, we make it relatable, but there's still that element of hope to it as well. So you can tell yourself, oh, if these characters are getting through it, I can get through it as well, and I can figure this out in real life and stuff. And I think those types of stories are the most important, to be brutally honest.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Obviously, I know you did say that you wrote this book very, very fast. But obviously you also had months of brainstorming and obviously the series before it took several years. So thinking of that, how do you balance life being a mom and a full-time writer?
Well, I think being a mom, being a stay-at-home mom now, I used to be a high school teacher before I had my first daughter. And then when I was pregnant with her, I had finished that school year, had my daughter, and we had moved out of California to Idaho, where I'm currently residing. I just think it taking advantage when she was little of her nap times. Nap times, I'm like, do I want to do a chore right now or do I want to like write? Do I want to brainstorm? You know, just really taking advantage of the times that I had to myself. And currently she's in preschool, so I take advantage of her preschool time. And when she's asleep, those writing sprints late at night, that was yeah, the Keyholder writing sprints. Whenever she would go to bed, I was like, oh, I'm writing immediately now because I've been percolating and thinking all day, like what I'm gonna do tonight, what evil things I'm gonna write. um, so it's just, but I think at the same time, it is fairly flexible still. Like there's a lot of parts of my day that I can't write, but I can always kind of be in my little mind palace and think and outline and plan. And I think a good book you have to think about. Like the thinking work is just as important as the writing work. And whether you physically write down an outline that's super detailed or you kind of have those outline ideas in your head, it lays the groundwork to be able to draft more effectively, in my opinion, when you've taken the time to think through even just like the emotions or like the progression of a scene or even like lines of dialogue. Sometimes I'll write those down. I'll be like, oh, that's a good line that I just came up with. Like, give me get my phone out. This character's gonna say this, and then I would like write it down. um but yeah, I like half of my work is thinking work just because I'm busy with my daughter and now gonna be busy with a newborn. I'll do lots of thinking work with a newborn.
Yeah, I think it was it Agatha Christie said that she used to like go over her storylines when she was doing the dishes. And then at the end,
Yes.
when she finished all the chores, she would then just write everything because it was just she'd been going over and over it in her mind for so long. And now we've all got dishwashers, so that just doesn't happen. Um, but no, I think you're right. It's like the writing is important, obviously, because without writing, you wouldn't have the book. But those quiet times, if you can have any moment when you can just sit and think, especially if there's like a plot point that you're struggling with or a question that you're like, how do I get from point A to point B? And do something. And that, and I have to admit, I don't. I try and use the voice recorder on my phone. I always like I'll just have it next to me. And I'll just like press it and just like remember, like say something like I said, lines of dialogue or random things. And then I've got to remember, okay, there's a voice memo somewhere in the rest of the other voice memos. You've got to go and find it and have that. And I do. I said that the writing sprints are so cool because you're forced to have that sit down in the chair moment. You are probably thinking, what am I going to write? Okay, I need to come up with something to write. And even if it ends up being something you're not happy with, it's all like little bricks on the road, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why writing sprints are so effective, especially in community, because I went live with some author friends. There were two ladies in particular that we all three wrote our manuscripts more or less at the same time and finished around the same time. You have that community aspect, so you have that like, healthy peer pressure. Oh, they're writing, I'm gonna write. But then it's time. So like we would do 20 minutes, like 5-minute break, 20 minutes, 5-minute break. And so it forces you kind of out of this like, oh, like that sentence sounded ugly. Like, oh, oh, I feel stuck on it. No, just type. Just go. Go. That's why it's called a sprint. We can make it pretty later. Just get the thoughts out. And some scenes go really well during a sprint because you like really know the scene and really know what you want to do. And other scenes, you're forced to just kind of like make a decision in the moment and just see what happens. And I think one of the coolest things about writing is that aspect of, well, something unexpected could happen while you're writing, and you could end up loving it, and it could end up being part of like the plot, and you never thought it would happen, but it just happened in the moment of improv where a character said or did something or something happened. You're like, whoa, this is fantastic. I never thought of it this way. This makes the scene so much better than what I was gonna do.
Yeah, I think we can very well easily get to a point where we just overthink everything. And I think that's where the writing sprints really come in to help because, as you said, it's more or less like improv. You have that clock ticking and you just want to write everything down before you can make it look pretty later. That's what editing is for. And I think it's really cool that all three of you wrote your manuscripts just using writing sprints. Like that's so cool. Writing sprints never worked for me, so it's amazing to me that you guys managed that.
Very unique experience, really fun. Not something I would do for every book, but this one just ended up being perfect for it. And like, yeah, it was really fun. And we would host the live, so three of us would be on live, but then we'd have like an audience of writers that would join us doing sprints too. And then during our breaks, we would be like, okay, everybody, like tell us how many words you got in your 20 minutes, like put it in the comments. So it was very just community based. Everyone's like, we're suffering together or we're having fun together. Like
That's amazing. Do you guys still meet every once in a while, like with your current books, or?
yes, there's still different groups of us that go live. It kind of like broke up after like the main section, but I've joined again. But the so book 2 of my Keyholder series is called Wrathwielder, and that manuscript has been very, very difficult for me. Bigger, harder. I don't know some of the questions at the end. I still have to figure those out. So with the amount that I'm stuck on, the writing sprints have not worked as well for me to progress through that book. But I have joined a little bit through the beginning of Wrathwielder because I knew the beginning a lot better than I have big questions then. I have to figure it out. I don't even know. We'll figure it out one day. I'll do thinking work when I have my newborn. I'll come up with it. It'll be like, this is brilliant. And then I'll be back on track.
Yeah, you know what? Any progress is progress.
I think especially just starting it, that's just like kind of getting the wheel going, even if you have to stop for a bit and then do the big thinking. It's like that's something just to do that. But no, I've got to admit, it's like I've never done a writing sprint for writing. I did, was it last year? Somebody put a call out saying they wanted to finish their manuscript and they were going to book hour slots, 50-hour slots with 50 different people. And I think I ended up doing 6 separate slots with them. And I did it for my editing. So even just that, I didn't even need to do the writing. And just watching somebody else in the corner typing away, it was like, man, I need to get some editing done. And I got so much of my editing done that I definitely would have procrastinated on because I hate it. And it was that piddly editing, you know, like not the big chunky meaty editing. It's that kind of the faffing, reading the same line a million times editing. And I really found it helpful having that little window of somebody else working and me going, well, I'm here, I'm sitting down, I might as well do it. And I got so much done. But maybe I should find a little sprint group and try because I'm in the second book and I'm just like, I keep hitting potholes in it and then going, I'm just gonna go and rearrange my bookshelf. And it's like, no.
Sometimes it can get you unstuck to just force you to make a decision and write something. Maybe you throw it away later, but maybe it ends up being the thing that's like, this is what I was missing. I can move on now, thank God.
Yeah, sometimes that's all it takes is just a little bit of help from some friends and that little healthy competition. That's where it gets me. I get like competitive that if I'm writing with other people, I'm like, well, I have to write more than them. But that's just me. Now, when you are writing, what advice do you have for writing twists that your readers don't see coming?
Well, an element of that happens in the editing round because it just has to. So I think something that's really important is when you breadcrumb in these subtle clues and details throughout the story, and then when you get to the reveal, it all comes together. You're like, oh, that was the thing. That's what's been going on. And I think the breadcrumbing done well is an exercise in reading that stupid book over and over and over and over again and putting those little points like, oh, here's where I could put this, just one line, just this one little thing, one little detail. And then later we're going to be like, oh my goodness. But I think the biggest thing with a plot twist is reader expectation versus the reality of what happens. Because as you create the story, you want your readers to have an expectation of where it's going. You want your reader to guess what they think is going to happen or what they think is coming or what they think is going on. And I think the best plot twists come from subverting those expectations in a satisfying way that naturally builds off of all the groundwork that you've been doing the whole story. It has to feel like you can't just shoehorn in, like, oh, this thing that happened, surprise. Like, you have to work for it and you have to lay all of that groundwork in a very intentional way. It's almost like you're emotionally manipulating your reader, but that's a good thing. You want that to happen. So you're giving your reader this like specific planned emotional outcome through like the labor of your efforts over time, over the drafts and over the editing. I think it's really cool. It's a really cool puzzle to figure out. I very much enjoy plot twists. I am very proud of the plot twist in my young adult dystopian series. It's 4 books. I have one big plot twist in book 1, book 2, and book 3. But book 4, because I took it was like 7 years of working on that series. Book 4 has so many reveals and plot twists because I had been thinking and planning that book for like years leading up to writing it. And so there was all these like, oh, here's what I think is going to happen. And my reviews are like, this just yanked me back and forth. And it was just so good. And I was like, yay, I did it. Because readers had an idea like going in like, okay, well, I think here, character's doing this. And I think the villain's plan is this. And when we get to all of those, it was so satisfying because I'd laid that groundwork and all these clues that I'd breadcrumbed through. And it's a lot of work, but if you do it right, you get such good emotional payoff from your audience, which is really what you want in the end.
Well, plot twists are super difficult, so if you can pull them off well and your readers are giving you raving reviews about it, then yeah, you did something right. And when you create your plot twist, do you go into your stories with the idea that like this is the end point? How can I reveal this? Can I reveal this in a twisty way? Or is this just going to be like a streamlined thing? Do you actually have the idea to turn it into a plot? I don't know what I'm trying to say. Do you have the idea of trying to turn it into a plot twist? Or as you're writing and editing, does a plot twist present itself and you realize, oh, I can do something with this? And then you go back and start inserting little things.
So I would say the majority of my plot twists, I think about ahead of time and I know. So I'm like, okay, I want readers to know this thing at this point in the book. So how do I build to that in a satisfying way that when we get there, like we've got that emotional payoff and it's not just like, okay, cool, I guess that's a fun fact, like moving on. I want it to make an impact when we learn, said piece of information. I did have a huge major plot twist in my dystopian series that I did not see coming. I went into a chapter to draft it being like, I want something huge to happen here. It's an important scene. It's an emotional scene. I have no idea what it is, but it's got to be something. Otherwise, I can't have this scene in the book just for kicks and giggles. Like on a very rare occasion, something will just happen. And I'm like, oh, that's so good. I didn't even see that coming. And I'm the author. Like, this is great. Probably like maybe 85% though, I like know ahead of time and I have to build intentionally towards.
Okay, no, that makes sense. I just find it funny that sometimes you have those happy little accidents where you write a line that's foreshadowing and then during your editing you get to the end and you're like, "Oh, wait a minute. I led up to this a while ago and I didn't even realize it." And I think that like those are one of the best feelings.
The crazy plot twist I had in my dystopian series was something that built over 3 books that I did not intend, which is the craziest part because book 1 and 2 were already published. I wasn't going to change those. But the way that the twist happened, I was like, this fits perfectly with book 1 and 2. Like I meant it from the beginning. I'm brilliant. Like it was an accident.
Totally know what you're doing.
I know exactly what I'm doing, but it was total accident. It was one of those like amazing accidents that's probably the biggest one of my writing career so far. Maybe I'll have another in the future, but the fact that it unintentionally built over multiple books and I like had no plan for this whatsoever until I got to the scene that I had no plan for and just like started writing and characters were talking. I'm like, something's going on here. Something's fishy. What is she saying this for? And it just like happened and it turned out to be so good.
I have to admit, I love it when there's the foreshadowing breadcrumbs throughout, but you kind of, as a reader, you pick them up subconsciously. And then when you do a reread, you're like, oh, that's a little foreshadow for that thing that's coming up late. I love that. That's why I've always loved rereading books that like grab me, because you always spot things like on the second and third read that the author kind of like, I'm going to subtly put that in there. You're like, yes, I love that.
One thing that's really cool about Keyholder is, so obviously when you read Keyholder for the first time, you have no idea what's going on. There's a lot of mysteries that get revealed throughout the book. Like I think at a good pace throughout the book. At the beginning, there's so much you don't know, and then as you start learning things, especially like as you start learning like the main thing at the end, you're like, oh my gosh, it all makes sense. However, what's cool about the book, so I've got my two main characters, Octavia, who's a farm girl from the kingdom with the Well of Bountiful Harvest, so the magic that makes all the crops grow and all the things. And then I've got my bounty hunter character who has been tasked with capturing the keyholder and delivering her to one of the kings. The whole story, like you learn things as Octavia learns things, because you don't know anything and she doesn't know anything. On a second read through, now that you know all the things, the bounty hunter character almost like becomes the main character in a way because of the things that he knows that you now also know. So you read it again and you're like, oh, he knew that. Oh, he's part of that. Oh, and it's like he's so intertwined. On your first read through, he's a total mystery. And then on your second one, I'm like, I could literally rewrite the whole book and have him be the main character and almost tell the same story. It's really cool.
Can I just say, this interview has been the best marketing, because I'm literally like, I need to buy this book right now. I've got 2 arcs to read. And I'm like, you know what? I can squeeze it in. Fuck it. I can. Seriously, you are making
It's
me
the
like,
same
oh my
thing
God,
for me.
I want to read this right now.
I don't even read fantasy all that often, and you're selling me, but this is what I meant earlier when I said I really appreciate your passion and your love and excitement for the story, because it's really
You're
it's
getting us
making
all
me want to go
excited
buy
for
it
it
now.
Yeah.
Yay. Yay. Well, it's a really good book, guys. I mean, I'm biased as all hell, but you know.
As you should be, as you should be.
Seriously, the moment these two, because if I buy a book in between while I'm doing 2 arcs, I will definitely not read them because I'm terrible. So it's like the moment they're done, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna go and buy that, and I'm hoping that you're on track for the 2, 3, 4 books that because I'll be expected to read them quickly as well. So chop chop, chop chop.
I know I'm on a little life hiatus with a incoming child, but I shall do my best.
Yeah, it's like if you've got when your daughter's born and you're getting no sleep, just use that time for writing. That's
Yeah, well, my main snag is I gotta figure out like the reveals right at the end because I'm not gonna write an ending that doesn't feel satisfying. Can't do it. I gotta figure out once I'm excited about it, I'm like, oh, this is the thing. This is it. All right, here we go. Like
seriously, I'm getting chills to want to read this. Okay, we're gonna shift a little bit from the actual concept of the writing and everything, and with the next question, what have you learned with publishing your first book series that helped you streamline the process for the Wells of Power series and subsequent?
So, like I mentioned earlier, I think my young adult dystopian series really was it was a huge learning curve for me, huge learning opportunity. And because when I wrote my debut, The Diseased Ones, I was like, cool, this is the first manuscript I've ever finished because I've been writing my whole life. I started lots of manuscripts. I got really far into a few of them, but I'd never actually fully finished a story arc until that book. And I was like, this is the one. This is the one that's going to get me published. How does one get published? How do you do that? I had no idea about anything. I didn't even know that there was different edits that a book went through before publication. I was just like, oh, you get it edited, duh. Like I did not know what that meant though. So one of the biggest things I did for myself was I went to the Southern California Writers Conference. I went to a writing conference and I took as many workshops as I could on, just like story structure and like publishing and pitching your book. I didn't know how to pitch a book either. How do you pitch a book? How do you tell what's your book about? Like that's an intimidating question if you've never done that before and you're trying to succinctly tell people in a way that hooks them what your book is about. So that conference was kind of the springboard of me learning all the steps involved in like what does it mean to publish and what does it mean to edit. And through that conference, I had met Acorn Publishing, which is who I ended up working with my first series, and they really taught me how to self-publish. They had these basically publishing guides that took me step by step through the whole entire process, all the things I needed to do to release a book. And so I kind of considered it like, to be a self-published author is a monetary, it costs money. It's a monetary investment because you're paying your editor and you're paying your cover artist, and if you can learn how to format or you can pay a formatter. There's like lots of steps involved where you can learn how to do it yourself or you can pay someone and work with someone to get that done. And so I just kind of considered it like my second degree. I went to school for chemistry and I taught high school chemistry, and then I've got this whole other creative side where I was like, well, I need to be a student, and it's important for me to learn from people who know what they're doing so that I can have the tools to then do it myself eventually, because I can't do it by myself now. I don't know how to do anything. So the two big camps is like, obviously there's the creative side with your storyboarding and drafting, world building, writing, art ideas, all these things. But there's so much like logistics too when you're going through the publication process, because you have editing and formatting and cover design and ISBNs and like, how do I sell my book? What retailers do I want to put it at? What printers do I want to use? Like, what dimensions of the book should I have? Like, all of this, it's not something that you learn overnight. It's something that you have to intentionally like learn and build skills over several years, honestly, to feel comfortable and know like the process and what order you should do things in. So by the time I got to Keyholder, not only did I write that book super fast, I was like, oh, I know all the steps and the order I want to do it in and all the things. And I've got my people, right? Because you network and you build friends. And like, I have friends that are formatters now and friends that are cover artists and friends that are audiobook narrators. And I've gotten to know these people over the years that now I can go to and be like, hey, I want to hire you for this. You can't have that like just starting out. You have to build to that, and you have to like continually pursue that in order to have like basically a self-publishing business be like sustainable, I guess. Maybe that's the right word. So I think to anyone who's like, I want to be self-published, what do? Sit down and be a student for a couple years. Like just learn. Go to pick some writing conferences, whether they're virtual or in person. Like go take classes from people, take workshops. It's worth it. You can, there are people who know how to do all the things. You learn from them. And then you know how to do all the things, and then you can help other people along too.
I have to admit, that was one of the biggest eye openers. Was like, as I started thinking, right, I'm going to eventually start to publish this book, which is still not out. But like, you start learning all this stuff, and it's like it never ends. You keep finding new things. Like as you said, there's the ISBN. I'm in the UK, so I have to once my book is published, I have to send it to the British Library, and apparently there's a time frame on that. It's like you got 40 days. That's it. I didn't know that. And we don't have the same copyright, but then if I want to copyright it in the US, I've got to go through that. I think I ended up with 9 pages of check boxes in different categories of things that need to be done, like the trim size, like the font size, like whether you want your cover to be matte or shiny or what. And obviously
there's 100 decisions for everything.
Oh, and even like I got loads of information down, and then it was Rachel was like, "Oh yeah, you also need a barcode." I'm like, "Oh God, of course you need a barcode." I didn't even think about you need a barcode. So even little things just kind of like slipped the net, and and I think that one of the issues I've always had is what you mentioned is it's the order, because you're kind of bombarded with this like you have to do a million things, and you're like. It gives you paralysis because obviously, you need to finish the book, you need to have it edited, you need to have beta readers, but the physicality of publishing it, of creating a finished product, there are so many steps. And you think, well, I'll do that first. Oh, wait, oh, that.
One thing that took me a couple books to realize, because like I said, I had worked with Acorn Publishing and they kind of was like, okay, now do this next. Now do this next. And they had like guides in order. So like working with them was like, it was so worth it. Like these guides, this is something that I paid for. Like these guides that they were like my teachers, they had created this curriculum and I was like, this is worth it. This is great. I'm going to do this. But one thing it's like, okay, well, you need the book, you need the internal matter of the book formatted so that you know how many pages it is, so that you know how thick the spine of the book is. Then you can finish cover design because you have your front cover, you can design your back cover, but you have to wait till you know how fat the book is to design the spine and then put it all together. And just the order of some of those things where I'm like, oh, that makes sense, but I would never have even known that. Like, wow.
I think it
Yeah,
must have
it's
been
so
really useful to
stupid.
have the guides, though. That's brilliant.
But I mean, but that's the thing. It's like you think that you have to get a cover for your book. So you think, "Oh, you could just get the whole thing done." But yeah, you wouldn't think that you can do part of it and then you have to do something else in order to finish the cover art. And it's just so dumb and everything. Like my published books, I did things differently with each book because every time I did something, I was like, "Oh, wait, this happened last time, so I really should swap the order of doing these things." And it's like, it's alerting. You did it much, much better than what I did. That was so smart to go to a writer's conference and actually learn about it, whereas I was making things up as I went along.
Well, like now, if I'm antsy about cover design and I know what I want my cover to look like, I'll commission the ebook front cover, and then I'll be like, I'll give you guys my page count like in like 2 months. We'll resume, and then we can do the spine and the back cover. Because I'm still writing my blurb. I got to get it all perfect. But like, you can do the ebook part, and then once you have all your things, then you can do the paperback and hard sleeve design if you're doing a sleeve wrap around or whatever. Because now you know how thick the book is, and then but I'm like, oh, because then I have my ebook if I just want to like show people the cover, pre-marketing, talking about my process all the way through, that kind of thing to garner more interest for the book.
That's so smart. Because a lot of the cover designers, you'll see that they have like the pricing tiers for ebook, for paperback, and then they'll have a bundle for ebook and paperback, which is usually, discounted. So I feel like a lot of people are drawn to that, myself included. I'm drawn to do that, and then they just get it all done at once. But it's so smart to just do the.
You could do a bundle and just let them know, like, hey, I'm commissioning just the ebook part. I'll pay for the bundle, but I want the ebook part that like here in this month, and then I'm going to be ready for the paperback part in this month, and like you go into it with that delayed expectation because then you get the discount, you get the bundle.
Oh, and that's so much planning too. There's
Yeah,
so
It is.
many
I have to
things
admit,
that it's, oh my gosh.
that's what I did. I managed to book my cover editor before she sort of stopped her submissions because she kind of like filled up her slots, and I nipped in at the very end, and I did the whole thing where I'm like, I'm gonna be stupid. I'm gonna pay for the whole trilogy of covers. Book 3 isn't even being written yet. Never mind book 2 being written, and I was like, yeah, and I was like, I'm not sure. She's like, oh, when do you think you'll need it? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not gonna know how many pages book 1 is yet. And she's like, don't worry. She goes, we could do that later. I can get you the cover, and then once we just sort that rest out because obviously once the files are there. And I honestly thought at first, I'm like, I'm going to have to write all these 3 books in a short time and get an idea of page count. And it was really nice knowing that you don't actually have to. If you work really well with your cover artist, they can just set everything up and, as you said, have the ebook cover ready and then add on the spine and the wrap at the end later on when you know your page count and everything. And I got a really nice discount for that. So it's like for a trilogy, it's like, yeah, go on, go on. I don't even know what the second and third book are going to look like. So I'm hoping to figure that out by November when she starts.
But you know what? This is exactly what Danielle said earlier about how she has her people. And this is why it's so important to network and make friends with these people who actually know what they're doing and hire cover design artists and editors that know the book industry and the publishing industry and know what they're doing.
100%. Yeah. And now actually it's funny because I didn't know when I first started, oh, there's like you get a developmental edit where you work on the story, and then you get a line edit where you make it read pretty, and then a copy edit where it's like, let's dot all the I's and cross all the T's and make sure all the periods are there. And that like now like on the back end of this, like a lot of years in, I'm a freelance developmental editor because of my developmental editor that I worked with and learned so much from. And it's like now I can be that person for other people. And like I work with indie authors to do like the nitty-gritty, like let's make your story work kind of edits. And I love that. It's so much fun.
And I mean, hearing the way you talk about your own story and the brainstorming and stuff like that, I'm sure you're a huge asset as a developmental editor.
I have a lot of fun digging my teeth into other people's stories. And some stories when I get them are already like really good, and then I can get really nitpicky. And then other stories I have to be like, all right, we've got bigger things to do, and like here's what I think that you need to like restructure or cut or add as like a holistic view, because my goal really is like I want to make sure that I'm staying true to the story that my client wants to tell. Like I'm your advocate. I'm on your team. Like let's make what you want to do the best it could possibly be. It's fun. It helps me become a better writer too, because I read other people's stuff sometimes. I'm like, that's brilliant. I need to learn from you.
I just can't believe you've got this series you're writing, this really awesome series, and you have a young daughter, you have another one on the way, and you're also an edit. I mean, seriously, where are you pulling this time? Have you got like some space behind the fridge? You're just pulling time out of it? I mean, seriously, I don't even have kids, and I feel like I get nothing done, and it's making me feel like kind of stressful that I'm massively failing because I can't even manage my basic day. And you're just
Oh,
like, look, I'm just over here doing everything
I'm
brilliantly. And
just
I'm like,
over here working. Yeah, well, there's definitely seasons where I'm like busier and seasons where I'm not. And I'm a very like type A, like task driven person. And so it's been hard for me to like sit back and be like, my body's growing a human. It's okay that I slow down. Like it's okay that I'm not writing right now, and that like things are just everything's kind of coming to a halt, and I just have to be okay with this season of life and enjoy it, because we don't have to always just work nonstop all the time for everything. But it's hard for me to like just sit and rest and be like, I don't have to do everything, and I can just, step back, and then I can come back when I'm ready, like
And that is a tough lesson for anybody to learn, especially creatives, I think, because yeah, I think Ari will agree. Like, we're the same way. It's very difficult for us to relax, and we feel like we have to be doing something at all times. And if we're not, then we just feel guilty about it. But yeah, sometimes you just need to step back and tell yourself it's okay. Gotta take those breaks.
100%.
Now, before we wrap up, which you have given us so much lovely information on the Keyholder series, but can you, I mean, the Wells of Power series, sorry. Could you tell us more about Keyholder and give us the blurb and all of that fun stuff?
So, Keyholder is a no spice, enemies to lovers, slow burn bounty hunter romance. It is for fantasy readers who are looking for high stakes, fast pace, epic quest fantasy. So I've got that epic quest element, cursed magical object, kind of similar to Lord of the Rings in that respect. Um, it's about a farm girl who becomes bloodbound to this cursed magical key that holds the power to restore healing magic to the lands. And healing magic has been shrouded by this killing darkness by the gods of old for 1,000 years. So once my main character gets a hold of this key, she is then hunted by all of the kingdoms, and she's captured by a bounty hunter in the name of one of the kings, and has to survive all of these evil evil people, all of these enemies who are keen to get their hands on her and the key. So really part of her story is just discovering like what does being the key holder mean, and and then one fun element, I always like to put my books on a clock. This Killing Darkness has started spreading out across, moving for the first time in 1,000 years. It's only just blocked the Well of Healing, and now there's events that trigger and it starts to move, and it's basically going to swallow up all the kingdoms. So the whole book is on a clock, and she's like, what do I do? What does this mean? How do I save everyone? So yeah, fast-paced epic quest fantasy with lots and lots of action and villains.
Well, I look forward to reading it.
Yay.
Seriously, me too. It's like, even before you did that part, it's like I was already hooked, and then you did that, and it's like, oh my God, yeah, I'm here for all of it. It's going on the list.
Yay. That makes me so happy.
Okay, it has been absolutely lovely having you on the show. We have one very quick final question. Tea or coffee?
Ooh, probably coffee. Yep. I know. I
Right,
do enjoy
you know what?
tea, though. I
No
will
more
say,
Americans on the show. No more Americans. It's just always coffee.
Thank
No.
you.
See, wait, but Ari, I have tea for this interview. Am I back in your good graces?
I think that should count more because she's drinking tea on the interview.
I'm drinking
Also,
tea
I
on
love the mug.
podcast. Let the record show that I'm drinking tea on the podcast.
I think I deserve a bonus for that as a little extra, not just you won last year. I need to win this year.
Yeah, the previous guest said tea. You have a point so far.
Wow, thanks. 1 point. Seriously, we need more people from China and India where the tea drinking is heavier. That's what we need. Americans and your coffee drinking, it's just breaking my heart. Anyway, please just tell our listeners a bit more about you and where they can find your work and all, pimp some links and stuff. Feel free.
Well, I am a stay-at-home mom, freelance editor, author, and I have a 4-book young adult dystopian series out. It's called the Hollis Timewire series. Book 1 is called The Diseased Ones. Everything's up on Amazon. That series has all formats: ebook, paperback, hardback, and audiobook. That 4-book series is a completed audiobook series now, which is so much fun. And I'm also have books up on Barnes & Noble and then various ebook retailers. So with Keyholder, I have all formats, but I don't have an audiobook for Keyholder yet. So that's a future project down the line when I can, save up for audiobook production for that book. I'm on Instagram and TikTok under DJ Harrington Writer, and I'm most active on those 2 platforms. And my website is djharringtonbooks.com.
Thank you again for joining us, and we will make sure to put all links and information down in the description below, so do go and check out her work and give her a shout out in the comments. Remember, we do release new episodes every Wednesday. Next week we're discussing retaining readers across multiple platforms. To ensure you don't miss it, hit the subscribe button on your way out. If you'd like to learn more about us, check out our website at themarewriterpodcast.podbean.com, and also you can visit our coffee page for more content. Thanks for listening to the Mare Writer Podcast. We'll see you next week. This podcast is brought to you by Too Many Ideas. We keep writing sequels. The music title Inspired is by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons.